Okay, lecture 19. So today we're going to start our fees acres evaluation. We're going to look at some of the records I pulled yesterday. Then I have all of them. Continue on with the robots. We're going to be inside the other classroom. Yes, we really got to go out and take a measurement. If anybody's got some time later this afternoon, 4 o'clock, I'm going to try to get a lot of the junk remaining out of the old livestock barn at the bottom of the hill. There's a lot of different tasks, a lot of things that got to be put in different locations. So even if you can come for only 10 minutes and do one of those tasks, that would be helpful. Next lab, we've got SIDAC coming in and showing us how to measure and monitor milking systems, how to make sure we go through a checklist to make sure everything's clean the way it's supposed to, what to check, what to look for. So Brittany Noto, an alum of the program, she'll be in the neighborhood. She's going to stop by. And then 2 weeks from today, we're going to try our first visit to Fees Acres. I got to get a van for that. So moving through, we're going to finish the content for the second exam today. When would you like to have your exam? So next Monday or Wednesday or the week after that, 18th and 20th. Any thoughts?
That's Wednesday.
One vote for the 13th. Okay. So next exam, we'll get the 13th. We'll do that. So any questions or concerns? So continuing on with our discussion from milk quality, we talked about all the things we got to look at to check on a regular basis. So you got to come up with each farm a schedule that gets things done. So if we're looking at milking equipment and the connection to mastitis, what are the potential areas or what things might lead to mastitis? So pulsation failure is certainly a common way that might happen, but that's something that's very easy to check. Are we getting our liner open all the time? We're in constant milking phase. That can be a problem. So over milking, once the milk flow has stopped, if we are milking with no milk flow, there's a possibility of teat end damage, that you've got the vacuum working on that teat end, nothing's coming out. That can lead to damage. So the liner squawks, we might introduce bacteria. The air comes in, it's of a higher pressure, it's going to go to wherever the low pressure as fast as it can. So that should be the rest of the machine, and potentially that air coming in one side of the machine could end up in one of the other teacups, and it's moving fast enough on that loose teat end that it might actually go into the teat cistern, the udder cistern, and allow that bacteria to gain a foothold to colonize that gland. So inadequate vacuum reserves, these are something we'll be checking next week during Pen 2 milking. Do we have enough vacuum to keep that teat end constant? We're not going up and down a range of pressures on that teat end. So you're looking at possibly damage, you're looking at the fluctuations may backflow bacteria into that teat canal, into the teat cistern. the gland cistern and allow those bacteria to colonize. So what are the economics associated with milk center maintenance? We're not talking about the fixed costs of having that all there, but what are the costs of checking things, making sure we got new hoses, making sure everything works? Pro Dairy at Cornell went through a study. They're saying that of the milk check, we're looking at 5 cents a hundredweight, or 3%, for 3.9% of parlor costs to maintain, to check things, moving through, looking through to replace things. We're looking at $1.50 per hundredweight for parlor operations. So a significant amount of our milk check, our compensation, is going to go toward keeping our milking machines where they need to. We might want to take some time on an annual basis to make sure that if we're milking in a parlor, are we getting the throughputs we want? Are we getting the operation we want? Is somebody coming in and checking things on a regular basis? I would think going through and making sure your vacuum works, all your pulsators are working the way they're supposed to, should be more than an annual event, but we got to get it done. They're suggesting here an annual event. So monitoring our equipment, learning to listen to the sounds. That doesn't sound right. Noticing what quarters of what animals are milking out. If there are quarters that are always slow in that stall, we need to start working our way through the system to figure out what the issues are. Going through and making sure that we look at things, spending the time, making those little fixes here and there is overall a small cost, but significant results can happen if we take the time to look at those things. So figuring out our schedule, making sure we take the time to get those things checked is important. Another thing we need to think about, or related to maintenance on the parlor, is parlor efficiency. How well are we using that fixed asset to harvest milk to help things move as quickly as possible? We looked at Wisconsin saying if we move from a tie stall, walking around the barn with the machines, having all the machines in one location in a flat parlor, we can milk twice as many animals on average as we could before in the same amount of time. We've doubled our efficiency. Are we using that asset as well as it can? Are we putting the number of animals that we possibly could? So we start with the question is how many animals do we want to milk? And more or less, as we get more and more costs associated with a parlor, we're looking at something that needs to have as many animals as possible to go through it to help pay for it. In the old days, we might have built those parlors so I can get done milking faster, so I can go out and do other things. But anymore, when we're talking $1 million, $2 million for a milking center, we really can't have that sitting idle across the day. We need to keep things moving. So how large of a parlor staff do I want to have? Do I want to have 1 milker, 2 milker, 3 milkers? Do I have people bringing cows to and from those milkers, or do they do that on their own? And then we always ask the question, and this seems to be an ongoing issue, even if you don't have turnover, making sure everybody remembers why they're doing things, making sure we train, making sure we don't have procedural drift. So how much time are you going to spend in the parlor? How many different things do you want to do with that animal? The more time I spend with each individual animal, the slower our parlor throughput. At Dairy Challenge, they were suggesting on one farm they go to 10 seconds of prep on each teat compared to probably 2 to 3 seconds for the old udder. Yeah. Per cow? Okay, that's still even faster, probably double the time they're already spending. So are they going to get that done? Are they going to do that? So do we want a force strip? Do we have to teat tip? How are we drying, if at all? And then, okay, what type of procedure routine do you want to do? Do you want to have territorial, people focusing on a different section, group, or sequential procedures? And then how we determine parlor efficiency. We think about turns per hour. How many times do we fill up that parlor and empty it out? We want at least 4. If we can approach 5, we're probably doing something about average. Approaching 6, that's probably not something we're going to do without a lot of people. And the idea is the fewer people we have in there, the lower our parlor costs are. So times we fill up and empty, turns per hour. How much milk do we harvest per stall per hour? So looking at 2x versus root 3x, the recommendations therein, depending on the stage of lactation, how much each animal is getting. You know that pen 2 up the dairy milks a lot slower than pen 1, but that is a function of what the flow of milk is through. It takes a minute or 2 to milk those higher producing animals than it does those first lactation animals. If we're doing a good job doing prep, getting everything where it is, getting our attachment right, we should get a significant amount of milk in the first 2 minutes. Anywhere from 40% to 50% of the total milk produced by that animal or given by that animal, and that milking should occur in the first 2 minutes. So are we getting a adequate prep in duration or stimulation? When we're milking our cows, do we get those units on and off as fast as we can? We get a good milk ejection reflex. We should have a strong milk letdown. That's going to lead to a more efficient, more expedient harvest. The peak flow rates for 2x or 3x, 12 to 10 pounds per minute. So we've got some cows up at the dairy right now, they're giving 60 pounds. So that's going to take at least 5 minutes to get them milked out. Usually more like 7. So what is our average rate? If we can do a little bit more because of pressure differences. With 2x, we expect to get more pounds per minute, but probably the same amount of total kind of minutes used to get those animals done. And the presentation said a half a pound difference is important. So if you've got an 8 versus an 8.5, that's not just noise, that means something as we go forward. How much time do we spend in low flow if we have automatic takeoffs measuring the flow of milk? How much time do we spend there? We want to spend less than 9% of our milking time or less than 25 seconds. So if we're looking at 5-6 minutes, we're looking at about 10%, 5 minutes to get that cow milked. How much do we get in that first 4 minutes? 5 seconds per additional pound are ways we can think about benchmarks to move forward. So milking performance, What are we looking for? Pounds of milk per milking, unit on time, average flow rate, cows per milking stall per hour. So those are turnovers of 4 to 5. Milk per stall. Our heavier producing groups are going to take a little bit longer. So we can correct that or adjust for that by milk per hour. Milk in the first 2 minutes. Peak flow, low flow. How many do we have to manage? Attach, bimodals. What are we dealing with there? We haven't timed our attachment quite right. So we're emptying out the teat cistern, the gland cistern, the milk that has already flowed down, and then we have to wait for a moment or two for a second flow of milk that's coming down because of milk letdown. So this is usually associated with putting a machine on too early. So we pull out all the milk that's already down and we have to wait for that milk letdown, or we've got a milk prep that really doesn't stimulate that milk letdown. And then the attachment of the machines actually starts that milk letdown stimulation in an adequate way. So you got to wait for that milk letdown and then you get that second bump. So what's the big problem with bimodals is it usually means there's an extended milking time. So we got more machine on time. We're taking longer for that animal to milk out. Bimodals. So if we look at flow rates, so time and then pounds per unit time, whatever that is. You'll have the flow rate starting and then you're going to get a second bump. So bimodal, you've got 2 bumps. This is usually associated with emptying the cisterns. So the teat cistern, the gland cistern, and then this is the milk from the current milk ejection.
That word was messing me up.
It happens. So you've got those 2 different sections. If we do our milk stimulation right, or milk letdown right, this gets moved over so we have more of a continuous flow. That makes sense? So I believe on one of the Academy of Farms there was a concern about that, and there was an argument as to whether it was an issue or not, or how it might be dealt with. So number of cows to be milked. We have to start with the size of the parlor, the number of milkers involved. Can we get all those cows through with the number of animals that we have? So what is our upper limit? In reality, how many we could do? So if we do 4 turns per hour, we're looking at getting everybody in and everybody out in 15 minutes. Getting down to 5 turns per hour, we're down to 12. 6 turns every 10 minutes. So we're really playing with a 5-minute window there. What are we doing? How animals are moving in, how they're moving out. So how much time are those animals standing around doing nothing in the parlor versus doing something that helps foster milk harvest? So how long does it take you to prep those animals? You got your minute to 2 minute window before attachment, and then how long does it take them to milk? So you've got probably what? Somewhere between 8 and 9 minutes that you have to make sure for that animal needs to get completely milked out. A minute or less, certainly less than a minute to prep those animals. That 1 to 2 minute window to get your letdown, and then 6 minutes to get the animal milked out, or at least we hope. That probably works out to about 8 minutes, which means if you're doing it every hour, you've got 7 minutes to get the animals in, 7 minutes to get the animals in, get out, and whatever buffer you have between dipping this cow and dipping this cow and dipping this cow, wiping, however it all goes through. So looking for efficiency, looking for opportunities. The more people that we have in there, the less of that downtime, that non-milking time we have. But is that worth paying that additional person in the parlor? If you have to go get your own cows, that is time when the milk is not being harvested, but it may work out or make sense given the number of animals you're working with. So most everybody at the dairy now does their own getting of animals. Depends on the day and who's there and what things are broken. But that's going to slow your turns per hour. So you need a good crowd gate, keep those animals up front, and we need probably consistency across all milkers as to how you encourage those animals to get into the parlor. We don't want to have a situation where this person does something completely different than that person. Did I show you the video last fall of everybody waiting for those animals to come in and them doing it on their own?
I don't think I'm familiar.
Okay, there was Ralph, the guy from Germania. You can train your animals where you never have to leave the parlor. It takes a couple of weeks and it's going to stretch out your milking time, but cows are smart enough that if you could come up with some sort of signal that the parlor is open, come on in there, and you step and you wait. They do it 3 times a day. They should, at least the mature animals, should walk in on their own. You still have to go get those, but instead of me leaving the pit and encourage, come on, let's get everybody in there, I should never have to do that. That's non-milking time. If we can do, and this was a double 30 something, where everybody agreed that nobody's leaving the pit to get an animal. We will wait till that last animal comes in and close the gate accordingly. So there was a lot of prep time while you're waiting animals to fill. So trying to use that one person doing a fairly large parlor. It can be done, and that's the reason that video, I mean, it's from 1990s, somewhere in there, but it can be done. It requires a lot of training of the animals. I don't know if anybody's heard about the latest training of animals. We're training them to go to a specific location to go to the bathroom. I don't know if anybody's seen that. So there are some researchers that say, yes, it can be done. The idea behind that is if they all go to bathroom in one location, then there's an opportunity to capture greenhouse gases, particularly ammonia. If it's all going to go up, urea hits the ground, it immediately splits into 2 ammonias. Those ammonias go up. That's a potent greenhouse gas. I'm not sure it's a direction we want to go down to say we can train the animals, but there are places that have, researchers have suggested that more often than not, we can get them into a location to get trained. So animals, they milk 3 times a day. They sort of know what's going on. But if I always go out and get them, they wait for me to do that. So being told. So what kind of milking routine do you have? Are you going to force strip on this farm or not? That takes time. pre-dip and dry. How's that going to get done? That pretty much has to be included some way, shape, or form. Is that going to be with individual towels? Or as we saw on one of the Academy farms, the new brushes that you have two side brushes and a bottom brush. Each teat gets 2.5 seconds or whatever it is. And then they go around again without the sanitizing solution and use those brushes to dry off the teats.
I have a question about that.
What?
Before they use that, they dry strip them. Wouldn't that hurt?
I don't know.
Like, I feel like that wouldn't be the best thing to do. Comfort-wise.
I would think there's some irritation with that, but it really depends on the person. If you are gentle and think about what you're doing as opposed to trying to start a lawnmower or something like that, I think there's an opportunity, but I think that lubrication probably helps a whole lot. But
I was just thinking about that when I was watching him do it.
So yeah, it might be a challenge. So force stripping, then dipping versus dipping, then force stripping, allow more cows to be milked than Y and Y. So we're looking at cows yield about the same. Cows per operator, the force strip then dip seems to be slightly more efficient, although not statistically different. Doesn't seem to be a difference in mastitis. Doesn't really, other than in a tie stall, we have the ability to milk more animals. We're probably getting a stronger letdown, a stronger stimulation, and we have a tendency toward that in the freestall, but not much difference when we've evaluated that or looked at that. So stimulation. So when as our lactation starts to dry off, we don't have as much pressure in there. A little bit more stimulation is required to get things going. There's some older research that suggests that those late lactation cows might benefit from a little bit more effort, but no impact on milking times, flow rates, or yields. So it's all about timing from whatever adequate stimulation we have to the attachment of the machine. If we can catch all that milk as it comes down, it doesn't back up, we can be our most efficient system. So is different ways to manage a parlor. We've got a double 20 here. So how does that work? We may have an operator that does a certain amount of animals, does all the routines associated with that animals, and then we go back or move down to the next one. This is what we do with the dairy, depending on who the operator is, 4 and 4. So prepping 4 animals, going back, attaching 4 animals, then moving to the second, 5 through 8, and we move on to the next and prep them and attach them. So milkers are moving from one area to other. You're trying to group to make sure that stimulation time is appropriate. So the cows are grouped. We may have a situation where we're going with territorial. In this case, we're looking at 3 milkers and they have their own stalls. I am responsible for the animals here. I do all the things that are appropriate for that animal. I've got 1 through 7, 8 through 14, or 15 through 20. I'm responsible for those animals and all the things that are associated with that. The last presentation We're looking probably at 2 milkers to keep that moving. Up the dairy, we're usually dealing with 1. Double 20. In this case, with a territorial approach, we've got 3 milkers in there, each with their own territory. I would think more practically, you're going to probably see 10 and 10 in a double 20. A person is responsible for 10 of the animals, and the other person is responsible for the second 10. Another approach to dealing with a parlor is a sequential approach. One person starts all the prep and continues down the line till they reach the end of the parlor. A second person follows in and then attaches. So it's a question of timing and moving at the same rate. So probably takes a little bit longer to prep than attach, so there has to be a lag or some sort of compensation so we don't catch up to that first milker. So going through, it's suggested that this is a much more efficient approach. Not much, 20% more efficient, that we're getting an increase in parlor efficiency of 20% if we can get something like this to work.
So like one person's only responsible for dipping.
Yep, or prepping, or maybe they switch, whatever, but with this side of cows, you do one procedure for all the cows, and then somebody follows up and does whatever's next behind you. I would think strip and dip. Somebody comes through and wipes, and then maybe you lap around and then you do attachment. So that's sequential, where different within one side of milking, you only have one job. And then you switch, go back to the other end of the parlor and switch jobs. Milking procedures, pre-milking udder prep, 10 to 13 seconds, pre-dipping, 4 to 10 seconds. Stripping, 5 to 10, drying, 5 to 12. So I would imagine that some of these are on the high side for what farms are going to see or what they're going to want for their throughput. If you add up those highs, you got a full minute per animal. That's probably not going to cut it if you're trying to turn over 4 turns an hour. So we need to focus on the shorter times if we can. So being as efficient as we can. With us, me and Professor Marshall milking in that emergency situation a couple weeks ago, one of the things you'll notice is that I'm certainly a lot more inefficient than the regular milkers. There's very little wasted motion in what they do. How the towel moves in their hands as they go from teat to teat. How they strip, how they do things. Everything, there's very little wasted motion. They are in and out much faster than I am, where I'm thinking about what I'm doing. I don't have my hand motions down consistently, or those towels don't flow around my hand. I try to do each corner with a different teat or flip it over or something. My hands are sloppy when it comes to that, whereas you watch them, that towel just kind of drifts from different parts going through. So that just takes practice and a desire to be more efficient. So we're getting down into those lower numbers, which gets us into 30 seconds, which may even be too long. How do you do your parlor analysis? You've got various programs that'll monitor things. Dairy Comp will put out a report at the dairy, an M-load report after every milking, and we can break that down, see how many turns per hour, what our maximum flow rates are, how long does it take to milk each group. Each of the parlor groups will have their own reports but you're looking for the same information. How long does it take us to milk a group? How long does it take to milk an individual cow? Which cows are the longest? How much flow do we get early in the milking? How does it all move together? There's an opportunity to compare our milkers. How well are they doing compared to each other? There's an opportunity to compare pens. Certainly pen 2 takes longer than pen 1, but there's a bigger flow rate associated with those. Identifying our slow milkers. If we can have an opportunity to put our slow milkers all in one pen, it can do dramatic things to our turnaround, our turnover in the parlor, getting all the animals done and through. If we got a double 20, pull out just 40 animals that are my slowest animals for whatever reason. Instead of spreading them out and slowing each turn of the parlor down, I put them all together and I only slow one down. There's dramatic efficiency opportunities there for getting animals through the parlor. If you can put those animals in a separate pen, feed them properly, get them bred, pulling them out tends to ruin things, tends to mess things up. So your parlor report, if you put parlor in dairy comp /P, we've got our different groups up there. We've got milk from the group, how much milk you're getting per hour, how much milk you're getting per cow, the number of cows that are being put through, total number per hour, when does a particular group start and stop, what is the average time per animal, average duration, and then we look at our peak flow rates. We assume that these are higher producing animals than these. This group over here, milk per stall, animals per hour, milk animals per stall per hour. So we must be fairly short going through. Those don't look like we're getting close to 4 on those. They should be going a whole lot faster through there. Error summary, how many times do we have to reattach? How many times do we have an early fall off? How many times are we not getting our hang on there the way we're supposed to? So automatic takeoff settings, what do we want to shoot for? When do we want to say that machine comes off? So some recommendations there. And again, you have to see the lower the flow rate we deal with, the longer we're to keep that machine on. We have to balance that with a completeness of harvest. So taking a look at how much is left or what our residual might be. If we can go through after the machines come off and we milk those, strip those cows for 15 seconds per teat, do a collective measurement, 8 ounces or 250 milliliters. We should get less than that on 80% of our cows. If we've got a higher number of cows with greater than 8 ounces or greater than 250 milliliters, we need to go and say, maybe we need to keep our machines on a little bit longer. Maybe we increase our vacuum a little bit. So what if we have those? Checking to make our machines are harvesting the way they're supposed to. So if we can get our detacher settings where we want them, the higher we set, the lower our machine on time. But we hope we find that sweet spot where we're milking those animals out. We're maximizing our milk yield per milking, but we're not leaving things on long enough to destroy teat ends or compromise teat end health. So we're thinking about parlor efficiency. How well are we getting our animals in and out? So do we have a crowd gate that's bringing animals up? Do we have rapid exit? All those things can increase the filling or speed at which those parlors fill. How much time are the cows involved with not being milked in that time in the parlor? We said with 4 turnovers per hour, we probably got to keep it under 7 minutes. If we're trying to do 6 turns an hour, which I don't think anybody really does, we've got to keep that under 2 minutes. So getting everybody in the parlor and out of the parlor in 2 minutes is probably not going to happen. So that's why we don't get 6 turns per hour. How much of our slow milkers, what percentage of animals, and we can go through that M-load report. If you click on the graph, you can see where your slow milkers are, the ones with the longer bars. If I pulled those out, could that make a difference? So which animals do we have that are milking for more than 8 minutes? Is there a way we can take them out of the herd to make our parlor more efficient? Can we put all our problem cows together? The ones that require extra time, the ones that we do more things with, and we try to put those in pen 7 up at the dairy, but we're not certainly putting those healthy animals in there that are slow milkers. So we want to maximize our milking time. We want to probably set at somewhere along the way that we're going to take those machines off. I've heard of farms that say we need to, especially the larger farms, we need to get those machines off in 5 minutes, in 6 minutes. And we put a maximum level on that and we say, okay, they're not done, the machine comes off. We got to keep that parlor going. So what does that do for that individual animal? And basically your animals that don't milk out fast enough are probably going to be culled for milk production. Yeah, so they're probably going to be culled. So it's a question of, here's my management system, who's going to thrive in it? And that might be one thing that you set. So I need to get 5 turns an hour out of my parlor. I can't slow down for 1%, 2% of my animals. That's a management decision. And you're going to pick animals that fit in that system. If you continually leave milk in that cow, you're going to back up the system and she's going to produce less. And in theory, she might be culled faster. But she no longer fits in what you've decided your management system is. She's not a good cow for your management system, especially if you're milking thousands and thousands of cows. These 1 or 2 that don't fit my system, we can send them off to somewhere else. So milking performance, we've looked at this before. What we might decide, these are average benchmarks. What might I do on my farm that's appropriate? Given the number of milkers I have, given the stalls I have, given the ability to get animals in and out, what is a reasonable or appropriate performance level for our herd? And can we reach it? Can we get to that moving through? So starting with benchmarks and then establishing what we think is appropriate for our farm. One of the farms at the Academy Farms, their stocking density in their higher pens was 165%. What do we know about that from standard benchmark recommendations? 40 pro, we say 120. And this is an argument we were sort of having in the back. Michigan State says we don't get rid of those cows because there's no way by taking animals out that you'll ever make up. That 165%, they were producing 96 pounds or something in that pen? 98 pounds in that pen. We know that every pen has a maximum amount of milk that they can produce. Could they produce over 100 per animal? Probably. But the farmer said, I ain't getting rid of animals, and there were groups that evaluated the farm that said you should get rid of 50 of them. So the question is, milk per pen, which was the goal of the farmer, where is that sweet spot? That farm was doing everything it possibly could to make sure those animals were not compromised. Pushing up feed 16 times a day, making sure the animals got in and out as quickly as possible. Nice stalls. So I would imagine they were somewhere near their sweet spot. But like at the dairy, we're looking at 65, 68 animals is about our maximum in those pens 1 and 2. If more than that, we take put additional animals in, we don't get any more from that pen because everybody gets knocked back. 120 is a starting guideline, but every farm is unique as to what they can and can't do. So we'll continue on with that discussion as we move through. As most people will tell you, it's the people that get things done for you. Having people that you can trust, believe, to get things done is the name of the game. And I think you'll hear that. That's a discussion we had yesterday out at the farm. People I can trust, people I can believe in is a huge opportunity. So we'll see you in lab.